They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine. You just can't get into it because they would never understand.
I know the pain, but there is a better way. In Forbidden West, Aloy is extremely agile, but so are the machines we hunt. They also actively track Aloy's movement and adjust accordingly, making it even more difficult to avoid their attacks. And then, of course, once Aloy gets knocked down, it feels like it takes forever for her to get up. We all know how to do a normal dodge by hitting circle, but Aloy often just can't dodge far enough to get out of the way. This is especially frustrating if you're coming from Zero Dawn, where we had the dodge prowess skill, which pretty much let Aloy go full-on Superwoman to float through the air to extend her dodge. But I think Gorilla realized this was a little OP, so we need a new way to extend our dodge in the Forbidden West. The key is sliding. If you hit square or whichever button you use for crouch while Aloy is sprinting, she'll go into a slide. We can use the slide to avoid attacks, and it has a few key advantages over the regular dodge. First, sliding is actually faster than sprinting. Of course, Aloy begins to slow down pretty quickly when sliding, but for a few seconds you can go much faster than sprinting. Slides also provide a few more invincibility frames compared to the normal dodge, the first 14 as opposed to the first 11. You've probably also noticed that Aloy can only dodge 3 times before stumbling. The number of dodges you can do in a row can be extended by equipping an outfit or weave with the evader skill. Maxing this skill out at 4 points will allow you to dodge 9 times in a row, but you'll never be able to dodge indefinitely. On the other hand, you can slide as many times in a row as you want, and sliding resets the dodge counter. So even when you do use some regular dodges, you can throw in a slide before reaching the limit to avoid stumbling. Sliding also lets you trigger the hidden quick draw mechanic, which slows down time, causes weapons to draw faster, and gives a slight aim assist boost even on ultra hard. Of course, you won't be firing off a shot every time you slide dodge, but you have the option, whereas you don't with a regular dodge. Okay, so how do we actually do a slide dodge? Well, as I mentioned earlier, you have to be sprinting first. I personally play with auto sprint turned on, so to get sprinting, I just have to push my left stick. But I know a lot of players prefer auto sprint off. So if that's you, then to start a slide, you need to press down on your left stick to get Aloy sprinting. After that, simply hit square or whichever button you have mapped to crouch to begin the slide. However, if you hit crouch immediately after starting to sprint, Aloy will just crouch, so let her get at least a few steps in before starting the slide. Now, starting the slide is pretty easy, but the part that drives people nuts is when Aloy finishes the slide, she'll be crouched, which puts you in a pretty vulnerable position and pretty much defeats the purpose of using a slide dodge in the first place. Of course, you can hit your crouch button to stand up, but in the heat of combat, it's easy to get stuck in that crouched position for a moment. The better way to come out of the slide is to start sprinting again by pressing the left stick. This will interrupt the slide and get Aloy back on her feet quickly. It doesn't matter if you have auto sprint on or off. Hitting the sprint input always forces Aloy to stand up and begin sprinting again. Okay, let's break the whole thing down slowly. First, begin sprinting, either by using auto sprint or by clicking the left stick to trigger a sprint. Wait a moment for Aloy to get going, then hit square or whichever button you use for crouch to trigger the slide. Use that slide to avoid an attack. Then, when you're ready to exit the slide, hit your sprint button again, even if you have auto sprint on, to have Aloy stand up directly into a sprint. I definitely recommend practicing this sprint slide sprint sequence outside of combat to get a feel for the input timing, and also how long you can slide and how different slopes will cause you to maintain or lose speed. As a side note, quickly alternating sprinting and sliding like this is a tactic developed by the speedrunning community, and it's the fastest way to move around on foot. You'll also want to practice another variation of the slide dodge that I'll call a slide roll. This is when we add in a regular dodge at the end of the slide. Remember, the slide has 14 invincibility frames and the regular dodge has 11, so if we combine them, we can avoid taking damage even more easily. To add in the roll, simply hit circle or whatever button you use for dodge at any point during the slide. We finish the slide roll combo just like before, by hitting sprint to immediately get Aloy back on her feet and avoid ending up crouched. Now, you don't necessarily want to use this slide roll combination every time, but the roll variation is very useful for avoiding attacks that have large AoEs, extended animations, or if the machine itself is really large. For example, when a rock breaker busts out of the ground, there's a large AoE that can stagger Aloy. Or when a Thunderjaw charges, its body is so wide that you often need that extra extension from the roll to avoid getting hit. Of course, avoiding these attacks and many others requires learning machine behavior and getting a feel for their patterns. This just comes with time and paying paying careful attention to the animations, but mastering the slide dodge will help you deal with these attacks much more easily. Now, you'll certainly still want to use the regular dodge sometimes, particularly for attacks that come in quickly and have a relatively small area of effect, like many projectiles. It's also good for quickly dodging through attacks, like claw swipes, or past a machine in the opposite direction of their attack to get positioned behind them. But overall, if you master the slide dodge, you'll have a much easier time taking on machines in the Forbidden West. Hopefully this video helped you out, and if it did, leaving a like would be much appreciated. There's also a number of other hidden mechanics the game won't teach you, like that quick draw I mentioned earlier. So if you want to learn more about those, you can check out this video right here. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.